out. You got the shot you need? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, ghouls, goblins, gremlins, and other creatures of the dark, welcome back to those of you who were there last year. If you remember, on my mother's birthday, I did the same thing at Ruby's house, and now I have an actual stage. So, how am I going to begin? That's a great question. I'm glad you all asked. I do not know. I spent days, months, envisioning what this stage is going to be. And I got the middle, I got the end, but the beginning is really the hardest part about this. Because I need to convince myself to do the rest of it now. And I can't do that if the beginning is poor. And so, realistically, the way I'm beginning is like this, by being self-aware about it, by being like, hey, I don't know how to begin, so I can lead into other topics, acknowledging the fact that I am completely nervous right now, the fact that I am currently shaking, and I'm aware of that. I'm running out of breath. This is not a comedy show, unfortunately. Brian's gonna do that in a couple of minutes, don't worry. However, the reason for that is because personally, I cannot think of a single joke that all of you can laugh at, because every single one of you has a really different type of sense of humor. So, to begin, I'm going to talk about random things I'm interested in, things I've done throughout the year. First thing is video games, because video games are awesome and cool. Kenny agrees, okay? That's right. That's right. Okay, cool. I'm going to continue. The show must go on. Babies do not count. Babies crying are not an emergency. Elden Ring, excuse me. Elden Ring, have we all heard of that? Have we heard of Elden Ring? One guy's heard of Elden Ring. One of you, another person, he's never heard of Elden Ring. Fucking liar. Alright. Elden Ring is a game I played recently, once I got the PS5, courtesy of my father. And when I got the PS5, I knew I had to play Elden Ring. Because Dark Souls is a very, very fun, very well-known series, known for being incredibly hard, but also incredibly fair. Because usually in Dark Souls, every single death is your fault, because you didn't learn the game mechanics. And I knew that in order to be a true gamer, I had to play a Dark Souls game. So I got Elden Ring. Elden Ring was incredibly fun. Elden Ring was incredibly enjoyable. It took me about 195 hours to beat the whole thing. And that's because I usually spent doing side quests. I beat the hardest boss, Malenia, Blade of Mikola. You see, I don't know the lore of Dark Souls or Elden Ring or anything like that. It's very confusing, and I'm not going to bother to explain it. What I do know is that Malenia sucks as a boss, and I hate her, because she's too fast. You see, the thing about Elden Ring bosses, or Dark Souls bosses, is that usually they telegraph their attacks, right? They tell you what they're going to do beforehand, so you know when to dodge. See, the thing about Malenia, however, is she is incredibly fast. Therefore, you have about like 0.1 second in order to react to her attacks. And it took me about 3 days to beat her. The final boss of the game was easier than her. Legitimately. I do not understand why they made her. She has another dumb mechanic called Scarlet Rot, which means that every time you get hit, you get a little buildup at the top of your health bar. But what happens is, if that gets up too far, you take a ton of damage, and it goes down very slowly. She also has another great mechanic where every time she hits you, she heals her own health. And so therefore, you have to continuously attack without ever being hit yourself, because then everything goes back to where it was before. Except now you're closer to death, and she is much healthier and quicker and faster. And she also has a second stage. Now here's the funny thing about her second stage, is the fact that in a majority of bosses, halfway through their health is usually when the second stage comes up. You have to deplete her entire health bar before she enters her second stage, at which point she learns to fly. Then you have to dodge a fly attack, which is even stupider. And it causes a giant fire balloon that also gives you Scarlet Rot. And remember, she heals every time she hits you. Every single individual hit. Because guess what? She also has another move where she spins a bunch of blades around her to hit you 1,000 times. And it's very hard to dodge because it's basically a constant hitbox. It's annoying. But inevitably, through perseverance and sheer will alone, and possibly a bit of luck, I beat Millennium Blade of Mikola. That's the story of that. What else do we get here? This whiteboard. It's a very fine story. You see, this. Thank you everybody for the messages on the whiteboard. This message right there, it just says welcome to the show. It's in English. It is English. It's just the letters are different. It's ones I made up. And it took me a while to, one, create them, and two, memorize them. But I've got it done pretty solidly. In fact, the letters you see here, a lot of them are not what they looked like at the very beginning. The S's are the same, the T is incredibly different. I went through like 3 different letters before I ever got to this final set. But anyways, originally, my plan was to have this whiteboard. My plan was to have this whiteboard. And then they said that you needed insurance for that. And so I'm like, great. I guess I'm just gonna have to get this notebook. And for the entire time, that was my plan. This notebook would be my list of topics and my list of ideas for this show. And then, today, just now, they said I could use this whiteboard. And that makes me mad, so I'm not gonna use it throughout this entire show. That's it, out of spite. I'm going to use this notebook for everything. Okay, what else? Numbers are fun. You like math, right? Let's hear for math, yeah?
No.
Math sucks, I hate it. Math gets a bad rep, honestly. Because it is very interesting. You know, it's called the language of the universe because you can describe so many things using math. And the main problem with math is just the way that it's taught, and also there's too many numbers, too many formulas, too many things to remember. It's not possible. But there's one thing about math that I find very interesting, and that's really, really big numbers. Big numbers are very cool. There's this one number called tree 3, and it plays with the idea of the infinite, because the infinite is also a very interesting topic. See, tree 3 is a very large number. The fact that it doesn't have a name, it's just tree 3. There is no actual set of decimals like billion, trillion, none of them. It's just tree 3. Because the human mind physically cannot understand how large this number is. The universe cannot contain this number. And it comes from a game of trees. So in this game, there's trees and there's branches, and you're trying to make a forest. Tree 1 is 1 seed. So you plant 1 seed, and then you plant that seed and connect it to another seed. Now, there's a couple of rules to the game. The rule is that, if any tree that every single generation 1 has to have a minimum of 1. Generation 2, a minimum of 2. Generation 3, a minimum of 3. So on and so forth. And also, your trees can't repeat. So any part of the tree that is the same as a previous generation, it dies. The forest dies, you can't do that. In tree 1, you can only make 2 trees. In tree 2, you can make 3 trees. And in tree 3, you can make 3 trees. Because the math, specifically, is that, what's crazy to me, it's very interesting to me, is this jump, right? Tree 1 is just like 1 tree. Tree 2 is just like 3 trees. Tree 3 is an indescribable amount of trees. how simplicity can create something so complex. How just adding one more seed from tree 2 creates an almost infinite amount of numbers. But that's the thing. It's almost infinite. It's not really infinite. It ends. It stops somewhere. But there's too many numbers to count. And that's the other funny thing, is infinity. Infinite. What does that mean? What is it? Why is it so interesting? One of my favorite examples of an infinite idea is the infinite monkey theorem, right? They say that if you take an infinite number of monkeys and an infinite number of typewriters, and you gave them an infinite amount of time, eventually one of those monkeys will type all the works of Shakespeare. Just because infinity creates all probability to 100%. Because once you have an infinite amount of time to do anything, you will do everything. That is the rule of infinity. Another thing, the Library of Babel. It's this story. It's a story, and now it's a website. It's a story of this infinite library that contains an infinite amount of books, and it contains every single possible combination of letters that you can use to make everything. Letters, spaces, periods, commas. That's what it is. And if you go to the Library of Babel website, currently there is an infinite amount of books for you to browse. Now here's the thing. Most of it is just gibberish. Funny. Most of it is just gibberish. It mostly just is a bunch of random words typed together, a bunch of random letters typed together. But if you search for any single instance of any single word, you'll have an infinite instance of that, which is kind of interesting. And so theoretically, every single thing that has ever happened and that will ever happen in the future has been written already. It's already in that website. It already happened. It's already written. But the thing is, there's no way to really find that book. Because amidst every single possible book that you can type into it, there's 1,000 other strings that are just nonsense. There's also lies in there. You know, you might be like, I was born on December 13, 2006. Somewhere in an infinite amount of books, that sentence is in there for infinity, forever. And that is true. But there's also things that say that I was born on January 5th of 1952. And so infinity, while yes, it makes everything probable, also makes everything kind of hard to find. There's also the canvas of Babel, which creates a canvas. And within that canvas, it generates every single possible combination of pixel colors that you can have. And so again, theoretically, every single image that could ever be thought of, any painting, any picture of any place, the end of the universe, it's all been drawn. It's all there. But again, it's bogged down by a bunch of noise, a bunch of nothing, basically. And that's just something I find pretty interesting. So that's my numbers talk for that. And now we go to quantum stuff. Now I've been a bit of a quantum kick lately, going through YouTube videos, scrolling to learn about random things. And even after the hours of videos that I've watched, it's still very complicated. And let's begin with black holes. Black holes are interesting. You see, black holes are strange because they break a lot of our understanding of things. They break the rules of the universe quite a lot. It's when something gains enough critical mass, right? It has enough, it's so dense and so heavy that it bends space and time to such an extent that the rules of the universe change, right? So space-time, right? That's a word we've all heard, space-time, the idea of space and time, the space-time continuum. So space is exactly what it sounds like. It's the space that you move in. It's up, down, left, right. It's the stuff. It's the stuff and the dimensions that describe it. Time is defined by these things called light cones. So in the field, in the general relativity, light is the fastest thing, period. Nothing can go faster than it. It's not possible. And so therefore time itself is defined by the speed of light. See, whenever a light source happens, it spreads in a three-dimensional sphere around itself, right? And then if you took a 2D section of that sphere and you put that light source, it creates one circle, then a bigger circle, a bigger, 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 so on and so forth. And then if you change that into the three-dimensional shape, you would get a cone. And that cone defines time, right? Light can only exist inside of that cone. Time can only exist inside that cone because nothing can go faster and beyond that circle of light. But in a black hole, space and time swap, right? So usually, we're moving about space, that's kind of like the y-axis, and then we move one direction in time. That's it. You can't go back, you can't go forward, you move one way in time. But in a black hole, time shifts and bends to the black hole to the point where your future is dependent on that black hole. It points into the black hole, and space is now warped to such an extremity. And there's this thing about time dilation, right? And I'm still not entirely sure how that really works. But essentially, time bends to gravity, right? Light bends to gravity, and because light defines time, time bends to gravity, right? If you were higher up, you would move faster through time, right? If you weren't bounded by gravity, you would move quicker. I don't get that. I don't understand that. I don't know why. Because the thing is, what I refuse to believe is that you can't go faster than light. Because just do it. You just go faster. I don't know why you can't. And I'm sure there's 1,000 mathematical theories and formulas that prove it, but I refuse. What was I? Time dilation. And so, essentially, this goes into the idea of faster than light systems, right? The idea of having like a spaceship or a messaging system that moves faster than light isn't really possible. Supposedly, theoretically, it isn't possible because every single faster than light system you can think of leads to a time paradox of some sort. Why? And what annoys me is that usually the reason it falls apart is because of an observer. An observer is the person who isn't being affected by a time dilation. So if you had a spaceship, you had a black hole, you had a guy entering the black hole, and you had a spaceship going by it, that man in the spaceship would perceive that person entering the black hole in a different way than the person actually entering the black hole. And this sort of leads to the philosophical aspect of this shit. It leads to the question of objective reality, right? Is there any such thing as truth? Do you think truth exists? Raise your hand. Okay. What is truth, right? Because a lot of the time, something to be true means that it isn't wrong, right? Like it is a law of sorts. This is true. This is real. There isn't anything else beyond this. This is fact. And it's interesting how it sort of seems to me that even space and time itself, the things that bind us to our reality, can be broken, can be molded, can be changed. And it sort of gets me thinking, like, is it possible to find something that is solid, that can't be bended, that can't be changed, that can't be altered in some way, shape, or form? And supposedly, not really. There's the idea of, because truth in the traditional sense is usually societally based as opposed to the cosmos and space, right? It's, can I say something that is true? Can I say that I am currently on stage? That is true, supposedly. Right now, my physical form is standing upon a set of floor that is slightly elevated to call it a stage. Therefore, I am currently on stage. And, it sounds a bit insane, and believe me, I think it's dumb too. But there is an idea that because reality is essentially bound by perception. We need an observer to see truth, right? An observer has to exist for that black hole idea, that black hole bending of time to make sense, for it to be real. Therefore, that observer defines that reality. It defines the truth. And so there's the idea of solipsism, right? Solipsism states that the only thing you can be sure that exists is you. Right now, I can only be sure that I exist because I know I'm real. I think, I feel, I'm seeing the world through my eyes. But every single one of you is just my perception. It is just what I see, how I believe you to be. And therefore, theoretically, all of this isn't real. It's just how my brain interprets reality. And it sounds dumb. It really does. And I do think it is kind of dumb. Because it does fall apart. The idea that you are the only one that exists, right? You are the only one that is in reality. It falls apart because other people know stuff that you don't, right? Because if you truly are the only person, and everything else is just a perception of something, you wouldn't really be able to learn. It's not possible, because you already know everything. Everything is already coming at you, everything. If the reality bends to your will, then everything would already be inside of your head. But it's not. You can learn, you can change, you can be different, right? And so, yeah, it kind of falls apart there. Change. Change is a funny one. There's a certain societal idea about the true self, right? Have you ever heard that the drunk words are the sober thoughts, right? That when you're drunk and the things that you say during there are what you're really thinking inside of your head when you're sober. And because the alcohol limits your cognitive capabilities, you're unfiltered, you're real, it's true, right? And that's just wrong. Because I'd argue that those filters, those very same choices that you choose what to say and what not, is also a part of you. That is also you. You also decided to say those things or to not say those things. Therefore, your personality shows those things. That's a part of it. You can't ignore it just because, well, I keep it real, right? Brutal honesty, that's a pretty fun one. Brutal honesty is dumb. It's stupid. It's not real. It's not true. It's not healthy. Because there's this idea of keeping it real. Keeping it real. I don't sugarcoat things. And the question leads to, why not? What's the point? You don't have to lie. But you don't have to be brutal about it either, right? It's not necessary to keep it real. It's not necessary to just be an asshole and just say whatever you want to think. Because, we have to choose our words. We have to be careful about certain things. We have to want to be better, right? We have to want to be a good person, And there's this other really stupid idea that words don't have power. Words are just words, right? And while yes, literally you are correct that words are just words, that doesn't change the fact that words have meaning. We communicate as a society through words. That is how we talk. I am using words right now. Words are the way that we express ideas, the way we express ourselves. And therefore, each single one of those words carries that with them. Every time I'm choosing and saying a sentence currently, it is tied to 1,000 other things that I've learned before. It is tied to me as a person. The reason I chose these topics, the reason I speak the way I do right now, is because of me. It speaks to who I am, right? You can learn a lot about a person through words. Words carry weight. That is how it exists. If I said fuck right now, a lot of you might be like, don't fucking say that. Why'd you say that? And that's the thing. Is because it is designed, it's a word that was originally, the internet kind of changed a lot of things, but originally it was designed to do that, to incite that reaction. to be a curse, is kind of what it was. That's why they call it curse word. Now, obviously, it's not literally magic, but to invoke that same reaction, it's supposed to be passion. It's supposed to carry anger. That's the point of that word. And the belief that, it's just a word. See, the reason you think that is because of the internet. It's because the internet came along and people started using it all the time because, it doesn't carry the same way person to person as it does through text. And over time, we learned to just kind of put it in everything because it's a funny word and we all like it. And so the younger people out here kind of use it indiscriminately, while the older generation learned that it had meaning, it had weight. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, is context matters. And this is where I talk about comedy. And I don't mean I'm going to dissect comedy as an idea, as a concept. What makes something funny? Oftentimes, it is a subversion of expectations, right? It is, I thought you were going one way, and then you went the other way, and that's really funny. And everything kind of sort of boils down to that, but that's simple. If I just say that, if I say something and then just do the thing that you didn't expect me to do, that's not funny. It has to both be a subversion of expectations while also making sense. There has to be a through line there. I can't just say whatever word I want and then expect a laugh. That's not how that works. And what a lot of people do wrong about comedy is, what a lot of certain types of people think about comedy is that it's this catch-all. It's this shield against all consequences, right? It's just a joke. Sure, I stabbed you 7 times in the chest. It was a bit, man. Get over it, dude. That's not how that works. You did a thing. People reacted to that thing. That reaction exists. That reaction happened. Just because you didn't mean it to happen, just because it was a joke, doesn't mean it didn't. It doesn't mean you're not responsible for that. This is how this works. See, there's this thing called offensive comedy. We all love offensive comedy, right? If I said the N-word right now, you don't laugh because it's so funny. No, it is not. Because when you say something, expecting anger from people, when you say something that is meant to be just crazy, insane, and harmful, what do you think? People are mad and that's funny? Wow, dude, crazy. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect the N-word to cause a reaction like that. That's crazy. Really funny joke, man. It's not. You have to take into account context, right? Certain jokes can be said at certain times, right? I can't run around saying fuck all the time because certain situations involve me to be more careful, right? I'm not going to go to a job interview and curse out my boss. That's not how this works. Context matters, right? George Carlin, famous comedian, he wrote an entire special he wrote a joke about terrorism, right? But then 9/11 happened. So what he did was he cut the joke out because he knows that the context mattered. It's not funny if something just happened. I can't joke about someone dying if they just died. But if I say it's funny that Julius Caesar got stabbed 27 times in the chest by all of his favorite guys, that's funny because that guy's long dead. He's in a different era. It doesn't matter. No one's gonna care. But if I joke about 9/11 right after it happens, what do you think that says about me as a person? What do you think I'm saying? Because those words mean something. I chose to make that joke. I chose to say these things, despite the fact that I knew the situation. Clearly, something is happening in here that isn't quite connecting well. These words matter. The N-word, right? The N-word carries a lot of historical context. That's the problem with it. It's the history. You can't just say it about nilly-willy, just expecting nobody to be mad about it. Hey, bro, it's just a word. No, it isn't. It's not just a word. It was specifically designed and used to dehumanize people. It was specifically designed and used to make it easier to treat human beings like they were objects, like they were property. If I use that word and just kind of say it, clearly I don't care about the history. Clearly I don't care about these people. That's the difference. When people say transvestite, that, you guys were using that just a couple years ago, man. What the hell? Because the way it was used. That's the difference. The usage of the word changes its meaning, just like fuck. Fuck was hard-hitting. It meant something. And then people used it all the time. Now it doesn't. The N-word is the exact opposite. People used it all the time. It was easy, it was quick, you know, your slaves acting up, bam. But things changed. We realized that, hey, maybe slavery might be a bad thing. And so we no longer use those words. It's like if I came up to you and spoke in Shakespearean phrase. Why? Why would I do that? Why would I do that? It's pointless, it's dumb, it's unnecessary. I don't need to do that. I can convey my message without it. It's not necessary. And if you choose to put it in there, you are actively ignoring context and history and feelings of people. And that's another thing, intent, right? Oftentimes things are excused because, well, I didn't mean to. That doesn't really matter. Because the thing about doing things and saying things is you can't decide how that person reacts. That's not up to you. If that person reacted negatively to the thing that you said or the thing that you did, that's your problem. That's something that happened. And you can't ignore it just because you didn't mean to do it. That doesn't really matter at this point. This person was hurt by you, so you have to fix it. That's it. End of story. There is no argument, there is no debate. You hurt someone. That's it. No talk about intent. You know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. All right. I'm reading. Intent. There we go. I got intent down. Objective reality. Biases. Those are fun. I should have set this up earlier, but hey, I'll do it now. Biases are they're one of two things. Either you know about it and you're actively engaging in it, or it's something that was embedded within you and it kind of just you learned it over time. And biases are kind of a really hard thing to navigate, right? Because of implicit biases, right? Implicit biases are the ones that were embedded within years and years and years ago, and now you actively engage in them without even realizing it. It's unconscious. It just kind of happens, right? And there's some really logical fallacies are also pretty funny, right? One of the most common ones I hear all the time is the overgeneralization fallacy, right? I spoke to 3 guys, therefore, every single person who is a guy is exactly the same way as these 3 guys. Not how that works. And I get it, right? Because as we stated before, your reality is based upon your perception, right? Therefore, if you never actually perceived anything different, you would assume that that is how reality is. That's fair. If a baby was born in a room that is purple, he would assume that's the only color. It's just kind of how it works. And the hard part about, learning is getting rid of those biases, right? And these biases invade kind of everything, right? Research papers even have biases because oftentimes those people have implicit biases. And without even realizing, oh, look at that, all of their subject group is the same race and ethnicity. That's no good. You have to include a variety of people to truly get a true research paper. But just because their reality and their situation causes them to pick out the certain people, it ruins the research paper. It's valuable statistic. Religion. I've gone a while on religion. I've said a lot of things, and I've gotten better at it. Okay? So, let's begin with the fact that there's 2 billion people who identify currently in the world as Christian. 2 billion. It's quite a large number. And therefore, any single thing that I could say about Christianity or Christian people doesn't apply to Christianity and Christian people. It's a specific group. Because I cannot, in good faith, say that, well, all Christians are this way, when there's 2 billion of them. That's too many. That's too many individual people to make assessments about. I cannot, as a human being, do that. Even if I had all the time in my lifetime to speak to every single one of those 2 billion people, I would not be able to do it within my lifetime. It's quite a lot of people. And so usually, my certain critiques of religion apply to a very specific section of people, a very specific type of person that uses religion as a tool to cause harm. Just, you see, religion within itself isn't bad. The Bible within itself isn't bad. It's just text, you know? It's the interpretation and the usage that changes things, right? You know? God, I think, is a great concept. I think God is very important because of what he serves, right? I think it's important to have that path in life, something in life to keep you going, to keep you believing that there's someone out there who cares about you, and God is that person. God is a person who will care about you no matter what, right? And I think that's important, and I think we need that. We all need someone, anyone in our life that will fill that role. And if God does that, that's good. That's important. Religion also offers community, right? There's a lot of Christians, as I just stated. Therefore, community, you'll find it, no matter where you look. And community is embedded within us as human beings. The way we survived back then, when we were so young, was through community, was through gathering together. And community is necessary for mental health. Literally, if you isolate yourself for too long, you go insane. You get depression. You go. It's horrifying, right? COVID, lockdowns. We all saw what happened. When people become isolated, it gets bad. And religion can offer a remedy to that. Now, what I also want to mention is atheists. I don't rag on them enough, I don't think. Because here's the thing. Atheists, a lot of them on the internet especially, also do this thing where the only thing they really care about is saying that religion is bad, and then that's it. End of story. Nothing else. No alternatives, no what do I think. Just, hey, you're dumb because God isn't real. And that's it. That's dumb. That's stupid. That's a waste of time. Oftentimes these atheists on the internet, Reddit atheists is usually what they call them, only care about feeling superior. That's it. They just want to feel like they're better than somebody. And that is their remedy. That is the way they feel better. It's just, hey, I'm smarter than you. I'm better than you. I don't believe in the Bible. Checkmate. That's what? And what, man? What else? What do you do to fill that void? What do you do to create that person that God is? What is? Now, me personally, I'm not religious. It sounds like it, but no, I don't believe it. But that's fine, you know? I don't think we have to force people to believe what you believe, whether it is Christianity or atheism, right? You know, you don't have to force people to be like, hey, God is real, you gotta believe that. No, that's dumb too. You're doing the same thing that you complain about. That's hypocritical. But one thing I do want to say about the specific types of Christians, usually conservative Christians, is they use religion as science, as something that is, it should be used to run the government, right? Remember when we had separation of church and state? Because, you know, it's not exactly great to have this one type of person rule the country. Conservative Christians don't really like that. They want to be able to just be like, hey, this is the way it works. This is how it is. And there's nothing else. And the thing about religion, spirituality, is it's not scientific. But the thing is, it doesn't have to be. That's not the point of religion. That's not the point of spirituality. Scientific doesn't mean good. Scientific doesn't mean better. It just means that it uses the scientific method to come to conclusions. Religion doesn't do that, and that's fine, because they're not trying to study things. They're not trying to find how black holes bend space and time. That's not the point. Religion serves its purpose, and it does it well. Science and logic should be used to run the country, right? Because the thing is, once you have a certain religion, perhaps Islam, Hinduism, run this entire country, and you're like, hey, these are the rule of the world, you exclude a lot of people who don't believe in the same things that you do. This world is very varied, and that's another thing. Human mind is incredibly complex, incredibly so. It is genuinely probably the most complicated and powerful supercomputer we have. Correct. Maybe not powerful, but definitely the most complicated. It is insane how the slightest differences, the slightest little touches, can completely alter a person's course of life, right? Especially through the ages of 2 to 7, right? I want to talk about parenting for a little bit, all the parents out there. I feel bad for you guys a lot. It is hard. It is a very difficult job. One thing about me is I often try to use logic to find the answer to things, right? The solid conclusion. And the thing about parenting is that there really isn't any. No matter how many formulas you want to try to use, no matter how much logic you want to try to apply to it, at the end of the day, you'll get it wrong. At the end of the day, some way or another, something's going to happen that you just kind of can't control. And a child is the most volatile brain. That mind of a child is the most influenceable. And so it's kind of hard to control everything, right? Because you are only human. It's not possible. You can't do that. You can't control the weather of the day, the school that they go to. Sure, maybe you can choose the school, but you don't get to choose who's in it. You don't get to choose who runs it. You don't get to choose how it works. The only thing you can do is give your child tools and hope and pray that they use them effectively, right? That's it. It's kind of out of your hands at a certain point. And it's stressful, and I hate that, because I hate not knowing things. I hate being uncertain about things. And, I can complain all day about parents, and I will. But before that, I do want to issue this heartfelt sympathy, because it's just not possible to do it perfectly. It's not. Especially as we talked about implicit biases, right? The things that you learned when you were a kid from your parents get passed on. And it's often hard to realize that, to realize certain things about you that are unhealthy and that get passed on to your child. It sucks. It's hard. It's hard to do that. And that's another thing, generational trauma. Generational trauma is the idea of exactly what it sounds like. You pass on trauma and experiences throughout the ages, throughout the years, throughout each generation. Therefore, the Irish potato famine, that affected somebody, and that person then had kids. And what they learned during the Irish potato famine, they taught to their kids. And that kid then learned that, and so it taught to their kids, and so on and so forth. And even though the Irish potato famine ended years and years and years ago, that knowledge and that experience is still here today. Because that is how human beings work. We can only say and do things that we learn about. And if we never learn about them, they don't exist. Therefore, oftentimes, your parents taught you how to be a parent. Now, this leads into another thing about escaping your childhood, right? Going past those traumas. It's kind of a hard thing, right? There's therapy is usually the way to do that, right? To learn about yourself, to recognize those certain unhealthy aspects that you might have picked up during your childhood. And it's hard to do that, and it takes a while to do that, and it takes even longer to fix them. And oftentimes it can feel impossible because how those formative years are so kind of set in stone, right? A lot of times, oftentimes, your certain mental illnesses or your fears and your anxieties are bound in an experience you had when you were a kid. Oftentimes, it is that kid self telling you, hey, you're doing the wrong thing, because your kid self learned to do that. And through enough work, you can change that, right? Because you aren't your parents, right? It's not how it works. You don't just become your parents. Sometimes people become the opposite of their parents because they have that moment of recognition and realize, hey, what they did was wrong, I'm gonna do the other thing. And the thing about that is you're probably also gonna mess it up again too. Because again, the mind is complex, the mind is changing ever so. And the interpretation of your things, like I said, your good intentions can oftentimes lead to harm. And it sucks. Even though you tried so hard and you put in all this effort to give your child tools to learn and grow and be better, sometimes shit happens. Things change. Their friends, their school, the media they consume. Oh my God, the internet has ruined the generation. Let me talk about that. The internet is strange, you know. My generation, we kind of grew up we grew up inside of it, right? We were there when it was already finished. Millennials grew up alongside it. They got to see the explosion of technology, and you guys didn't grow up with it. And the internet has sort of really done a lot when it comes to the mental psyche, right? Because there is just so much stuff on the internet. There is too many things on the internet. And oftentimes, you can't control it. Because the thing about the internet is it works on an algorithm, right? And oftentimes, you get fed the same things over and over again. The internet is really good at creating echo chambers. It's really good at being like, hey, so you clicked on this ad once, right? From now on, the only thing you're ever gonna see are things related to that. And because the internet is so easily accessible and it's designed to keep you on. It's designed to keep you on your phone, to keep you on your computer, because that's what makes them money. You understand that, right? It's because it's profit incentive. It's the idea that like the more I make money as a social media, as a platform, the more people are on there. And the longer they stay on there. The longer they stay, the more likely they are to see an ad. And those advertisers see that these users are spending hours and hours on my platform. They're gonna spend more and more money because that's valuable space, right? And so they learn really well how to keep you on there, how to grab your attention and make sure that you never leave. Because the internet is infinite. There are billions, trillions of hours uploaded just in that second. There were probably billions and billions of hours of content that you could watch just on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. All these things keep you on there. There's too much stuff to go through, and that leads to too much information. The human mind isn't really capable of handling all that. And now kids are inside of it. And now literal children are being exposed to thousands upon thousands of opinions and ideas and stuff. And a kid can't handle that. A kid cannot deal with that. A kid internalizes a lot of stuff on there. And you remember how we talked about generational trauma? Right. So you, as a parent, taught your kid the way that you learned, or perhaps the opposite, depending on your stage of growth, right? You taught your kid how you learned when you were a kid. And now people on the internet are also teaching your kid how they learn. So that's really fun. So now they have 1,000 parents all telling them 1,000 things, and now they're all learning 1,000 different ways to learn about it. And whatever seems the most best to them is what they're gonna pick out. Even if you as a parent taught them a lot of stuff, if there's enough voices on the internet to counteract that, well, you're wrong. There's too many people on the internet. You're just one person. The internet is crazy, because the internet's also kind of good, right? The internet allows for communication, easy access to information, right? Way back when you had to go to a library to gain all that, now you can just kind of Google it, right? People can learn a skill in just a couple of hours because there's 1,000 different people out there with that same skill who want to teach other people, and I think that's very valuable. But holy shit, has it kind of just been left to ferment, really? Uh, it is terrifying, honestly, because even as I say this now, I know I am just as addicted to my phone as any other person. Even though I'm self-aware about it, I know that I don't have enough willpower. There's just too much stuff on the internet. It's just so much easier to just go on there than to go outside for a walk or to talk with friends in the real world, to go plan an event. It's right there. An infinite amount of content, so I can never be bored for once, you know? Apathy is a tragedy, and boredom is a crime, so we fixed it. We fixed every single second that you have of silence. We've changed, and we've capitalized on every single moment that you could possibly have. Every single minute that you could spend off of your phone doing more productive things, don't. Because I got the answer for you. It's Instagram, it's YouTube, it's Twitter. These are so much better options. No, they're not. And we kind of learned that they are. Because they're really good. It's like supermarkets, right? You might not even realize it, but supermarkets also love psychology, trust me. They employ every single tactic to get you to buy as much things as possible. They know a lot of things about you, right? They know that 90% of people have dairy on their shopping list at any given moment. So they put the dairy aisle all the way to the back of the store so that you spend more time within their store. Because they know most likely you're gonna go get dairy. So the dairy's all the way back there. And they use the tactic called decision fatigue, right? If you make too many decisions all at once, you get tired and you're more susceptible to making wrong decisions. And so therefore, right boom, at the front of the center, right when you enter the supermarket, bakery section. All the sweets and stuff that you could buy. So you have to make it in your conscience like, no, I don't want those things. I'm going to move on. That's one decision made. You're gonna make a lot more soon enough. The grocery aisle, right? Every single one of those fruits was specifically chosen because they look good, right? And often leads to food waste because if it doesn't look good, it gets thrown out, even though it's just as fine. But it's just not competitive as much, you know? And so every single fruit and vegetable is handpicked to make sure that your eyes look at them and you're like, those are really, really good looking fruits. I might buy them. I might buy some. No, that's not on my shopping list. I'm here to get a gallon of milk. And then as you pass these aisles, the aisles are also specially designed to get you to spend money. Because I'm sure we all know this, everything at eye level is the name brand. It's the things that you know. It's the Fruit Loops. It's the Kellogg, stuff like that, right? Everything at the bottom is the not so name brands, the cheaper stuff. But because it's just like right there, I'm not gonna bend down to get another thing. It's right there. The end caps at the end of the aisles are filled. Companies spend a lot of money on those because usually you're gonna look back and look at them and be like, I might get one of those. It's just right there. You've already made like 5 decisions so far. And now, finally, you're at the dairy section. You're like, okay. In your shopping cart, there's probably a bunch of snacks that you found along the way that you're like, I might as well get them. You grab your gallon of milk, and then you go to the aisle, and then you see all those little trinkets, those juices, the gum, the candy right there, and you're like, it's small, it's insignificant. I might as well just pick one up, put it on there. And then you realize, oh wait, actually, I don't want these chips. I'm gonna put them back. But wait, there's people in line, and this aisle isn't large enough to let me go by. That's design. They did that for a reason. It's because they know you're most likely not gonna go back to disturb these people. And so they force you into these small little sections to get you to just buy the thing once you've already made the decision. Smells too. They have little machines that give out smells in like the bakery section, or they spray water on the vegetables to make them look a little prettier, even though it actually rots them quicker. They love keeping you there. They love having you buy a lot of stuff because what makes money. That's it. End of story. That is the most important thing to them. Psychology is interesting when it comes to advertising and marketing and the internet because it is incredibly embedded within, right? Psychology plays every single role of every single algorithm that exists on the internet. It plays a section in every single store that you go to. It plays a section in every single advertisement that you can see. Psychology is a part of all that. Okay. Now, throat is dry. And I'm going to take a little rest because I want you all to get ready and give a round of applause for Brian Ordui. Come on, Brian, let's go. Let's go up on stage, Brian. Brian's got some great stories. He's got some great stories. He's got, gusto, charisma. He's got all of it.